Well, usually when we look out a window, we fully expect the glass to be, completely clear. We expect to see objective reality, a tree, a street, the world exactly as it is. But imagine trying to look through a window where the glass is completely shattered. It's heavily spiderwebbed with these deep, jagged cracks. Suddenly, that simple tree outside, it looks fractured, distorted, maybe even a little threatening. Because think about it, you're not actually seeing the tree anymore, are you? You're literally just seeing the cracks in your own window. This shattered glass metaphor is absolutely crucial. It is the perfect way to understand how our own unexamined baggage and personal biases can completely warp how we perceive the people around us. It's like we project our own fractures right onto them.
Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to our explainer today, where we're going to unpack the deep, fascinating psychological mechanics operating just beneath the surface of Violet L. Ryan's 2014 novel, Accountable. Now, on the surface, sure, it might look like your classic romance with familiar tropes. You've got the brooding older brother, the innocent young fiancé, the sprawling mansions, the whole shebang. But the psychology operating beneath those tropes, it is a surprisingly accurate, deeply human study in cognitive dissonance and prejudice. We are going to look at exactly how an author manipulates character perspective, physical environments, and internal trauma to build a situation where an emotional explosion is literally, mathematically inevitable.
So, here is our psychological roadmap for the day. We'll start with that shattered window metaphor, explore a masterclass in prejudgment, break down the wild phenomenon known as the misattribution of arousal, dive into the confirmation bias loop, and finally, we'll ask a very unsettling question. Who is the real pawn here?
All right, starting with Section 1, the shattered window metaphor. And this concept actually ties in perfectly with the highly dramatic cover art for the book by Nancy Donahue.
Moving right along to Section 2, a masterclass in prejudgment. Let's meet our players. So the crucial point is that before our main characters are even in the same zip code, two wildly opposing worldviews are already constructed. Enter Wade Kendall. He's a wealthy, cynical Harvard alum who is very accustomed to immense power and control. And right now, he's sitting in a maroon leather chair in his lawyer friend's office, and he is absolutely furious. His younger brother David, a 21-year-old college student whose biggest personality trait seems to be a massive obsession with basketball legend Larry Bird, well, David is getting married on New Year's Eve. Wade is fiercely investigating this new 18-year-old fiancée. Now, protecting family wealth, that's a totally rational instinct, but Wade doesn't just investigate. He draws a permanent conclusion before he even has all the facts. His private investigator uncovers that Allison is an orphaned product of the foster care system on a college scholarship. Wade takes that single data point and runs it straight through the filter of his own unhealed trauma, namely his ex-fiancée, Kathy Carver. Kathy played the sweet innocent, right? But she was secretly marrying Wade for his money while keeping a lover on the side. So Wade's behavioral output from that trauma is pure cynicism and a drive for retaliation. Allison, on the flip side, comes from the foster system. Her behavioral output, it's a desperate search for safety wrapped in completely blind optimism.
I mean, just look at this stark juxtaposition between Wade's projection and Allison's actual reality. It's crazy. On one side, without even seeing a picture of her, Wade confidently bets his lawyer friend that Allison is, and this is a direct quote, a blue-eyed, blonde-haired China doll with dollar signs flashing systematically. He's basically playing a vicious game of 4D chess in his head against the hyper-calculated predator. Meanwhile, Allison's reality is completely different. She's riding in the passenger seat of David's powder blue Alfa Romeo, just bubbling with natural optimism. She has dark hair, dark brown eyes, and is honestly just a vulnerable former foster kid who desperately wants a family. She has no idea she's even standing on a game board.
Which brings us to Section 3, misattribution of arousal. Let's see what happens when these two worlds collide.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how it tests the psychological armor Wade has built up. The very moment the environment forces a physical collision, things go off the rails. When David drives that Alfa Romeo up to the imposing 4-story Kindle estate, the physical setting itself acts as a massive tool of psychological intimidation. Allison is staring at this cream-colored stone mansion with peaked towers, a colonnaded porch, and literally a turquoise pool with live swans swimming in it. It instantly triggers what she explicitly calls Alice in Wonderland syndrome. She feels like a stray who could never possibly belong. Out in the driveway, Wade steps outside. His sympathetic nervous system is absolutely flooded with adrenaline. He is ready to do battle with a blonde temptress, but instead, Allison steps out. She's got these streaky honey-colored curls blowing in the icy wind, dark roots, wide dark chocolate eyes silently pleading for understanding, and Wade basically stops breathing. His reaction is involuntary and intense, and it's all because of this biological glitch known as the misattribution of arousal. His body is geared up, racing heart, shallow breathing, to fight a predator. But when his brain can't reconcile the hostility he expected with the beautiful vulnerability he actually sees, it converts that massive dump of adrenaline into intense physiological desire. He is completely short-circuiting.
From a narrative perspective, the author then deliberately strips away all the buffers to isolate them in an environmental pressure cooker over the next 24 hours. You can see how the escalating tension perfectly maps out here. It starts with their arrival in a hostile environment, shifts to the freezing cold outdoors during a sailing trip, pushes them into this intimate nurturing space while doing dishes, and finally culminates in the physical touch of a movie night.
These mundane domestic battlegrounds completely blur the lines of power, subverting the initial intimidation of the mansion. First, inside, Wade actually subverts his own billionaire status by sitting right next to her, using humor and shortening her name to Allie just to disarm her. Then he manipulates the schedule so he's alone with her, taking her out to his sailboat in the freezing Lake Michigan wind. Out there, he physically acts as a windbreak, unexpectedly shifting from antagonist to warm protector. Back inside, the guard comes down even further. They're doing dishes, water splashes on her face, and he gently threads his fingers through her curls to wipe the water away. It's a quiet, nurturing action that leaves her dizzy. And finally, during movie night, David obliviously falls asleep on the couch. Wade leans in close, whispering mere inches away, exerting just a tiny bit of pressure on her shoulder. The tension is so overwhelming at this point that Wade realizes his attraction is fully defeating his cynical logic, and he literally flees the room.
And that takes us to Section 4, the confirmation bias loop.
So, after fleeing to his room, Wade actually has a potential character breakthrough. He throws himself on the bed and considers, maybe he was wrong. Maybe she really is an innocent, wonderful girl. He decides to finally drop his mental armor. He walks barefoot down the hallway, stands outside Allison's door, raises his fist to knock, entirely ready to be vulnerable. But right before his knuckles hit the wood, he hears a male murmur. And then he hears Allison giggle with David through the door. That single giggle acts as a physical blow. It instantly resurrects his trauma. And this right here perfectly illustrates the confirmation bias loop. Human brains function like social media algorithms long before computers ever existed. We have this filter that actively seeks out information to validate our pre-existing beliefs, mainly because being right feels a whole lot safer than being vulnerable. Wade gets one single piece of data, that giggle, that fits his previous bias of her being a manipulative user, playing both brothers. Instantly, his mental algorithm just deletes all the positive, vulnerable interactions they had shared just hours before.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because this algorithm immediately turns into terrifying retaliation the very next day. Wade regresses straight back to his traumatic baseline. He labels her a Jezebel, a totally malicious threat. During a fake, highly manipulative trip to Chicago to supposedly buy her a wedding dress, she admits to him that she has no family to invite to the wedding. Now, he feels a pang of genuine sympathy in that moment, but he forcefully squashes that internal empathy down, using the memory of the giggle to completely harden his heart. Finally, he leverages her deep financial vulnerabilities and her desperate desire to be a bride worthy of his family to spring a verbal trap that leaves her absolutely stammering in shock.
Which leads us to our final section, Part 5. Who is the real pawn?
Now, I want you to really think about the relevance of this for us. Because yes, while we are dissecting dramatic fiction, a heightened reality for sure, the mechanics of prejudice and the terror of new environments, those apply to all human behavior. Because the truth is, we all bring our ghosts into new relationships. Whether you're walking into a new job, trying to integrate into a complex new family dynamic, or honestly, just trying to navigate a frustrating misunderstanding with a friend, we all occasionally look through our own spiderweb of cracked glass. Our unexamined baggage dictates the narrative before the other person even speaks a single word. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly provocative thought. We know Wade's trauma makes him assume the worst just to protect his brother. And we know Allison's trauma makes her desperately ignore these tension-filled red flags just to secure the family she never had. So, if they are both operating entirely out of their own unhealed wounds, are either of them actually seeing the real David? Or is David, with his sunny disposition and oblivious nature, just a convenient pawn for both of their emotional survival strategies? That is something to deeply mull over the next time you find yourself staring through a spiderweb of cracked glass. Thanks so much for taking this explainer journey with me today, and keep your vision clear.